Hello everybody and welcome back to Pravus Gaming and more Democracy 3 Africa, playing as Zambia and going into Year 7. Alright, things are going really well for us thus far. We actually now have 100% of the votes, which is a very rapid turnaround for us. Health is going up, the GDP is going up, things are looking pretty solid for us. And things like the uncompetitive economy and so on should eventually be on their way out as a result. I'm looking forward to getting rid of malaria as well. However, with a rapidly growing GDP comes a whole bunch of different problems, especially environmental ones. So we can see that the water shortage is getting worse, which is going to affect food prices and might cause a crisis later. Pollution is going to be getting worse, asthma is getting worse, and so on and so forth. I'm actually kind of worried that we might lose our natural wonder, because I think there's a very good chance it's going to start plummeting pretty soon. And that would be bad. We can probably get it back, but it would be bad. So I don't know. We'll have to see what we can do about that. But let's move on to Year 7. I'm probably going to be focusing a lot of my efforts on counteracting the damage done by a rapidly industrializing nation and trying to improve our environment. Oh, crap. Okay, hang on. Foreign competitor underpricing. One of our key extraction industries is being undercut by a foreign competitor, crashing the commodity price. So, right. What they're basically going to try to do is say, hey, you need to create some tariffs on the competitor to try and even the price out to be more fair, which is what we call protectionism. It's bad in the sense that our domestic industry is going to suffer, jobs are going to be lost. It's good in the sense that whatever the commodity is here, though, this is the thing about international trade, and I don't know if everyone understands this. Yes, for example, take the steel market. Okay, there was complaints back in, I think it was the 1970s, that Japan was artificially lowering the price of their steel to try and undercut American steel. And as a result, the American steel was not as competitive, it was losing out on business, and as a result, it was losing out on jobs. Unions and businesses alike were very concerned about that, and a lot of people say, hey, you need to put tariffs on Japan and the imports so that we can actually have a competitive price again. Okay. And yes, that's a very politically popular thing to do. Heck, even Donald Trump talks about that these days. Because we don't like the idea of losing jobs, and we don't want a core industry to start downsizing, because, you know, it's going to lose capital, right? That's the idea behind it. Here's the one thing that people forget, and I think it's very important to understand. So our foreign competitor is underpricing us right now. In fact, their government is probably subsidizing the companies. Okay. The commodity price has crashed. Okay, let's again assume it's steel. There's a lot of benefit, actually, to having ridiculously cheap steel. Construction, for example, should become incredibly lucrative. The profit margins for construction companies in my country are going to be skyrocketing because the cost of materials is significantly lower. And that's happening because our opponent, our neighbor, or whatever other country this is basically giving us free money by giving us cheaper goods. Yes, one industry is losing its job, but the quality of life of all of our citizens doesn't necessarily have to go down, like on an average scale, because a lot of other businesses are going to thrive from a low commodity price. So I don't know, there's benefits and downsides to something like this, and this is one of the reasons that I'm such a big proponent of free trade, is because if somebody else is underpricing us, then I think that our own system needs to become more efficient so it can actually match those costs, or else maybe our American steel does need to actually go downhill for a while. If it's not going to innovate and meet the needs in the market and become cheaper, then maybe they should downsize. Maybe they deserve that. And in the meantime, the American people themselves will actually profit pretty well from cheap steel and all the benefits that come from that. Cheaper cars, cheaper housing, cheaper this, that, and the other. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, if they're cheating, that's upsetting, sure. But I don't know if the correct reaction is import tariffs. Now, a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but I think it is interesting. Hey, we're talking about economics already. Let's just talk about a bit more. Real estate bubble. Now, this is one of those problems I was worried about with the rapidly growing GDP. So what's basically happened here is our housing supply is limited. It's not growing fast enough. We have too many people, from immigration and so on, and property speculation resulting in a huge increase in housing costs. Current prices have made housing unaffordable for the young and the poor. What do you guys think is the proper solution to this problem? See, the way I'm looking at this is it's a pricing problem, yes. Prices are too high for some people. Okay, fair enough. However, why is the price going up? Well, because the demand is greatly increasing. One, because of immigration and just more people need housing, but two, because the GDP is going up, people's average wages are going up, so they think, hey, I want to buy a house. So the demand has gone up, right? But the market supply has not risen up to meet that demand. So as a result, whenever the supply remains the same but demand goes up, therefore prices go up. It's basic laws of supply and demand. Now, I think what most people will say when they see this is the young and the poor can't afford housing. Well, that's just downright immoral. What we should do, they will say, is pass rent controls. Let's see. There you are, rent controls. That's a price capping system. I do not think this is actually a good solution. The more I study free market economics, or just economics in general, the more I actually do not think that this is a good solution. And let me go into a little bit of why. If you don't want to hear this, I'll include a skip button, but I'm going to dive a little bit into some basic economic theory here. And you guys can kind of tell me if you track with this and if I'm right or if I'm wrong. The politics of this are very simple. Okay, it's very easy to pass rent controls because all the government has to do is say, oh, that's just downright wrong. People are gouging and blah, 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 right? Prices are ridiculously high. So we need to put a government law into effect that restricts how high prices can get, right? And that's very popular politically because, well, I mean, if I'm renting an apartment right now, if the government comes along and says, hey, we're actually going to make the apartment cheaper than what you're paying right now, I'm going to say, oh, cool, more money for me, right? Yes, kind of, sort of. But we have some problems with that as far as the supply, and this is where my concerns come in for rent controls. Here's a basic principle of economics. If a price for a good or a service is artificially lower than it would be in a free market, then the consumption generally goes up. I'll say that one again. If the price is artificially lower than it should be, the result is consumption of that good or service will go up, and vice versa. If the price of something is artificially higher than it should be, the consumption of that product or service goes down. Okay? That's a basic tenet. Now, what happens with rent controls is you are artificially lowering the price of rent than it would be in a free market under this housing crisis, and as a result, consumption is going to be higher than it normally would be under the free market. And again, that just makes sense. If you let the free market do its thing and the prices are higher, well, then of course people are going to consume less. Not as many people can afford it. Okay, that makes sense. But the consumption is a big deal when it comes to supply, right? Because a big driver for this is we don't have enough houses built. That is the problem. So what you're basically doing is, let's suppose that under the free market situation, the prices are really high, and in order to make ends meet, let's say four young single adults would all room together under one house, and they would share the bill in order to make it affordable. All four are under a roof. It's not optimal. They're kind of cramped, but they're able to afford a house, and one house is being used to house four people, and that's what they would do under those free market circumstances until something changes. When you imply rent controls, though, and you've made it affordable for the average person, all four of those people, instead of rooming together, will say, hey, I can afford a whole place on my own. They will go out and consume a whole house each. So now instead of rooming together, you are now having one person per house. You are consuming 4 times the housing than you would have under the free market. I know the prices are high and it's ridiculous, but the result is now the consumption has grossly gone up. That's the worst case scenario there. And as a result, because there's not enough housing to go around, what you've done is you've increased homelessness. Getting housing becomes a first-come, first-served thing, and that's all because of rent controls. And on top of that, you actually have made it so that supply is not going to increase anytime soon, because you've made housing and rent unprofitable. So think about this for a second. Let's suppose that I have the capital to invest in building, a building, right? Now, under the free market, I'm going to look at this price boom, and I'm going to say, ooh, wow. There's a ton of profit to be made right now. Yeah, it's you might call it price gouging, but this is just meeting the needs of the free market. I'm going to build a residential complex, and I'm going to rent it out. And as a result, I'm increasing the supply. Yes, I'm making a ton of money, and as the supply goes up, eventually that will reach a new equilibrium. But in the meantime, I've increased supply. But thanks to rent controls, it's no longer very profitable. It might, in fact, be more profitable to just go and build an office building and rent it out to a company instead. And we actually have a lot of historical precedents for this. If you look at, especially after World War II, San Francisco, New York, Melbourne, Australia, a lot of examples like that in, I want to say that there's a few, I read a few examples from like 1979 and in the 1980s in particular, where rent control was imposed, but the result is the supply did not increase. If anything, it actually went down because they were not well maintained. So you've done nothing to improve the supply, and you've increased the consumption. That results in a really serious problem. Again, rent control's very, very popular politically. But as with many forms of price controls, there are a lot of adverse effects that I don't think people always think through. Now, in this game, I'm not sure it's going to have that all well thought out. I don't think that... I'll bet you anything that in this game, if I pass rent controls, it says, oh, the bubble goes down. Well, yeah, because people aren't paying as much per housing. The result should be, though, that homelessness skyrockets. But I don't know if this game is going to be smart enough to do that. But if this is something you guys are interested in, I'd recommend you guys look up some examples online, find some cities that have done this. There are a lot of cities throughout history, especially in recent history, where rent controls have been imposed, and there have been a mess of nasty effects. So, I don't know. Something you ought to consider. So I don't think this is actually the very good solution to this problem. Actually, it's more likely, if I had to pick one, and I don't want to do this, but if I had to pick one, state housing might actually be better. Because it's more expensive, but what I'm doing is I'm spending government money to build homes. And then, yes, I have a bureaucratic, bloated system that's trying to rent it out to people, but at least I've increased the supply. So I don't know. This is probably the solution I'm going to have to go for, or maybe I could ban second home ownership, but realistically, this is probably the better solution of the two. It's more expensive. But I don't know, most people think of rent controls, and I don't think it works. Not the way you want it to. It works very nicely in the short term, it's very popular politically. But the road to hell is paved with good intentions and all that, right? Price controls, typically, pretty bad. Anyways, I'm not going to worry about it right now, though. After that long-winded problem, the explanation of economic theory, I'm not going to go into that right now. It's not as high of a priority, I think, as the environment and dealing with some of the water shortages and so on. So we're going to instead worry about passing things like recycling. That'll be pretty good for the environment, do a little bit of work for us. The environmentalists, by the way, are 72% of the population, and they don't really like me right now, so I probably should try to fix that if I can. We will also pass micro-generation grants here. There we go, relatively cheap, a couple $100 million kwacha, and improves the environment again by another 6%. CO2 emissions goes down, and it doesn't upset anybody in particular, which I think is going to be pretty good. Next turn. Do we lose the competitive economy? No, but we did lose the natural wonder. Well, damn. That's not good. Oil price spike. Do we subsidize the fuel? If we do nothing, right, and the price goes up, well, I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to let it do its thing. If the oil price spikes, then people are just going to have to consume less until the supply evens out. It's very tempting to get involved with price controls and subsidies and so on. It really is. But it doesn't always solve its problem. I mean, here's something to consider, right? With state housing, let's suppose, okay, let's just make up a number. Let's suppose that rent per month is $1,000 per month. Normally, like 3 years ago, it was like $500, but all of a sudden it's spiked. It's $1,000 a month. Ridiculous, right? Okay. If it's $1,000 a month, don't you think that a lot of people are going to want to invest in this area where there's huge profit margins? I mean, yeah, they are. Foreign investors, internal investors, somebody's going to say, holy crap, there's a killing to be made. Let's build a lot of housing. And as the supply goes up, but the demand hasn't changed, then the prices will gradually go down and you reach a new equilibrium. It may take a little time, especially with something like housing, which takes forever to build. But in the meantime, it's an actual long-term solution. And if you have a housing crisis where there's not enough housing to go around, well then high prices are going to force people to consume less and room together, and as a result you've kind of alleviated the problem with the market self-rationing itself, basically. It's something to consider. Hey, by the way, I didn't even notice that 95% of my population is self-employed. That's pretty crazy. My god, 95% of people are their own free men. It's great. I love it. You know one thing we ought to do? We ought to go to our labor laws because they're kind of ridiculous right now. They're super duper freaking pro-employer, which, by the way, apparently is not very democratic. Well, that seems hilarious. One could argue that an extremely pro-union country is going to be organized by, giant unions and the elites of those unions, and that's basically another form of oligarchy, kind of like it would be on the opposite end of completely pro-employer. One could argue that both extremes are bad. So that's interesting. Huh. Well, either way, we're actually going to go to just a balanced setting right here. Partially because I want wages to go up. Yes, I know we have socialism coming back into the country, and that's very unfortunate. Blah, blah, blah. But wages will go up a lot because people are able to negotiate a little bit better. The leverage shifts a bit more towards the people. And that's a good thing. The working week will go down, so our productivity is a little bit lower. In fact, our productivity goes down directly. But I'm okay with that, because uncompetitive economy will be gone as of next term, which is really the only reason I was waiting as long as we were, so it's about time. Believe it or not, you may think that because I'm a free market capitalist, oh, you're very pro-employer. Not really. I mean, free market means that people have the freedom to negotiate their own contract, the employer and the employee both. And it's not inherently pro-employer or pro-employee, it just wants people to be free to negotiate without external factors muddying it up. Right? That's more or less the idea. So really, I'm supposed to be more on the balance side. Corporatists, right? Corporatists would be more on the pro-employer side. Socialists or the labor parties would be more on the pro-union side, but I'm supposed to be more in the middle. But yeah, anyway, just something to think about there. All right, moving on. All right, there goes the uncompetitive economy. That's excellent. That's going to be really good for our GDP. Even though the global economy is in recession, we should be going up. Offer to build a national monument during the nascent stages of our relationship with a new trading partner, which I think we did a couple years ago. They have offered to erect a national monument in our capital city. This would anger our historic allies, probably, but we already kind of cut ties with them, so who really cares? I think this will upset patriots, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's cool. Build me a Statue of Liberty. I want it. Yeah, okay. We should consider doing some other things like organic farming. That will improve our health a little bit. There we go. Health will go up by 8.61%. The rural will be extremely happy. Now, rural membership going up does concern me a little bit. Actually, now that I think about that, that could be really bad. Hey, by the way, environmentalists are up to 91 freaking percent. Good grief. I mean, the worse pollution gets, the worse it's going to be, but still. Yeah, this water shortage is going to cause a oh, yeah, okay. Well, we have a lot of international trade, which is going to be trading more food to us because the prices are so high, which, by the way, is another example of the price controls I was talking about. Price of food is really high? Oh, good. Well, now we have an incentive for outside countries, neighbors. Hey, let's just say United States, since we produce a ton of food. Hey, there's really high prices in Zambia. We can make really good profit. Let's send some food to Zambia. And as a result, the supply of food is going up, which means that prices will start to go down. That's how it works in the real world in a properly free economy, or at least it's supposed to, assuming nothing gets in the way. That's all economic theory, of course. But the water shortage is going to cause a serious problem. In fact, I would not be surprised if next term we have a food price crisis. That's really, really bad. Okay. Well, we're going to continue trying to fix the environment because that's one of the driving factors of the water shortage is going to be the environment, which is really, really, really bad. So let's pass, let's say, car emission limits. This is going to do a lot for us. We're going to max this out. The environment will go up by 21 freaking percent. Now, it will upset the motorists, which is unfortunate because they're already kind of getting angry at me, and they're a very large voter group. But I think we'll survive it anyway. Let's move on into the next turn. Uh-oh. Well, there's a bit of a problem with the gas prices. Petrol protests. High levels of fuel tax have led to a small number of highly vocal citizens staging street protests and demonstrations at both gas stations and the depots. So basically, people are now protesting that prices are too high. Now, to be fair, I am contributing to that. The petrol tax is currently at 40%, and that is a pretty driving factor. It's so high that, yes, in fact, we are making it artificially higher. Through our taxes, we have made the price of gasoline artificially high, which means consumption has to go down. Which is good for the environment, but not so good for the economy because people need to transport. So, yeah, we actually have a very good reason to reduce the tax. We are causing a big problem here. On top of that, though, we have the food crisis, which I did predict could happen because food prices are really, really bad. That's not good. We also have a rare earth crisis. I have never seen this before. Rare earth metals are necessary for a wide range of high-tech products. Prices for these elements have risen significantly, leading to supply bottlenecks and black markets. This crisis has a significant impact on productivity. Ooh, we're about to lose our technological advantage for that. Ooh, I have never seen this event before. And it's driven in part because technology is so high? Foreign relations are kind of okay, so I guess people are trading with us some of the rare earth materials we need, but still. Wow. Never seen this before, but that's probably because I don't ever play with clones and drones on Democracy 3 Africa, so that's what I get for doing new things. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, well, one of the things we could do to counteract that, I suppose, would be rare earth metal mining, but that costs 32 political capital, which is pretty expensive. We also have serious food problems. We also need to reduce the consumption of fuel. What to do? That's a lot of problems that all kind of cropped up at the same time there. This has not been a good year for me, has it? No, sir. No, sir, it has not. Okay, water shortage, priority here. I'm going to say that food prices are going to be a priority. Let us go to the Climate Change Adaptation Fund. So basically, we're going to be spending a ton of money to try and deal with the climate change and the effect it's had on the water shortage. We're going to reduce the water shortage directly. The rural people will be happy, environmentalists will be happy. Unfortunately, it's really expensive, but we're going to have to do it, I think, in order to make this work, which means we're cutting away our surplus entirely. And the GDP is starting to go down, which, you know, again, not good. We will also pass some fuel efficiency standards. This should reduce our oil consumption. The oil demand is going to go down. It'll upset capitalists a little bit, but beyond that, not a big deal. Car usage goes up. Interesting. Well, how does that work exactly? Car usage goes up. Does that mean that oil demand slightly goes up? How much is this counteracted? I'm not too sure. We need to look at the oil prices. Hang on. Oil supply is dwindling right now. It's been going steadily down for a while. Oil demand is leading to a higher oil price, which spiked under the oil price spike. Right. This problem will sort itself out eventually, I think, on its own. It should start ticking down. I don't know how long until this goes away. But yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm going to save the remaining 7 political capital for the next video, though. Because next turn, I might need to pass some really expensive policies like rare earth metal mining and stuff like that in order to counteract some of this stuff. This is pretty bad. This is really bad, actually. I'm kind of shocked at how this is affecting us. Well, under my utopia, what I would do is say, hey, open up the borders. Let's free trade our way out of the problem. But, you know, I don't know if the game's going to let me do that. So yeah, we have to increase the supply of rare earth metals. We have to increase the supply of food, poor farm yields, and overpopulation. A reduction in the population would be good. How's our immigration looking right now? Oh my god, okay, yeah, that will do it. That'll be a big, yep, that will do it. So, immigration's too high. The result is it's actually driving down wages a lot. Immigration, as I've said before in other videos, is a good thing when it's at a reasonable amount. If it's too high, you flood the nation and it causes a lot of civil unrest, as well as economic problems, and right now that's where we are. And a big part of that is because, 1, we're a very stable nation, 2, we're becoming quite wealthy. So yeah, we may have to pass a few policies to reduce immigration, which is notoriously difficult in this game, but we'll deal with that next time. Thank you all for watching. This has been Pravus. I hope that I made some sense as I rambled. Hope that I was able to communicate what my understanding of some basic economic principles. If you disagree with me, you are welcome to cite some sources on that. But in the meantime, I'd recommend you guys look up some of the effects of rent controls after World War II, and get back to me before you do. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.